Hello, my name is Danielle Felice, and welcome to this presentation on the impact of climate change on aviation. As we know, climate change has been increasing over the past few decades and is becoming a more integral part of our daily lives. In this presentation, I will explain how climate change is impacting aviation, what is currently being done to mitigate the impacts of aviation, and what can be done in the future to prepare aviation infrastructures for increasing climate change. So climate change's impacts on aviation can be broken down into 5 parts. That is temperature changes, precipitation changes, storm patterns, rising sea levels, and wind patterns. The overarching variable is temperature changes because it kind of piggybacks on everything else. You can connect them back. So in terms of temperature changes, as we know, the Earth is warming, and this is leading to increased overall average temperatures in places around the world. And an increase in temperatures at surface level decreases the density of the air, which makes it harder for planes to take off. Now, this can affect planes that are overloaded or too heavy, and if they have a shorter runway. It can be harder for a pilot to be able to take off and may result in aborted takeoffs or running off the runway. Also, it can contribute to more fuel being needed for a plane to be able to take off. Also, higher temperatures can affect the infrastructure of runways and planes themselves, with them overheating and needing more maintenance. The next variable is precipitation. Now, this doesn't mean just rainfall. It can also mean rain, wintry mix, or snow, hail, such as that. Now, an increase in rainfall can make it very hard for a plane to take off, if it is allowed to take off in such heavy rains. Wintry mixes and hails, even though an engine of a plane is built to take these attacks on itself, they do have their limits. Also, having rain or wintry mix on the runway can decrease the friction of the runway and make it harder for a plane to come in for landing. This can result in planes skidding off the runway. Precipitation can also impact the visibility of the pilots when taking off or even taxiing around the runway. This can result in one-way collisions or missing turns on taxiways. And as we've all probably experienced, this will affect delays or cancellations of flights, as precipitation is the main cause of why a flight is delayed or canceled. The next variable are storm patterns. With an increase in temperature because of climate change, the surface temperatures and the air in the upper atmosphere are becoming warmer and more active. This causes an increase in storm patterns and can intensify, and shows that storms have been intensifying over the years. This just doesn't mean that storms in the Atlantic hitting Florida or in the Gulf Coast are becoming stronger, but these are also impacting changes in weather patterns. In the past, we didn't have to worry about hurricanes coming up the East Coast and hitting New York or the New England area. It was a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. But now these are becoming more frequent because of climate change and changing storm patterns. And these have to be accounted for aviation, because most airlines are not going to be taking off during hurricanes or strong tropical storms. The next factor is sea level rise. Not only is sea level rise going to inundate any airports that are close to seawater, the coast, but they can affect the visibility, because as we know, fog can form on the sea level, and if the sea level has risen, the new sea level will bring up more fog to those areas. And the last variable are wind changes. Much like how storm patterns are changing, wind patterns are changing and becoming more intense because of climate change, and these can affect how runways are designed. Well, runways were designed to make it best for pilots coming in or taking off, but the wind will be with them. As wind patterns begin to change and intensify, pilots can have winds coming at them from different angles, affecting how they are taking off or landing. So, who does climate change effects on aviation affect? As people, we are the ones using aviation the most. And as storms become stronger and it can become more dangerous to fly, there is an increased likelihood of human fatalities because of aviation accidents due to weather. Besides for the unfortunate human fatalities, human lives can also be disrupted because of climate change. If you are trying to get a connecting flight and you miss your flight because of weather delays and such, we all know how that can affect your plans. Also, cargo flights have exploded in the past decades as e-commerce has become more readily available. And although cargo doesn't complain to pilots that they're delayed, humans will complain that their shipments and packages are delayed. So it can be an economic burden and an effect on logistics. There can also be changes in flight patterns and destinations. Some low sea level countries that are disappearing because of sea level rise may have to close their airports, and you could no longer fly into that destination. Also, flight routes could be changed because it is no longer deemed, the risk is no longer good enough for the airline to want to fly into that airport, because the approach to that airport or the takeoff from those runways has become too dangerous because of climate change. It will also affect current airports as they try to build infrastructure and improve on their existing infrastructure to deal with incoming climate change, which can also lead to delays and changes in flight routes and destinations. So what can be done by airports and airlines to prepare for the increasing impacts of climate change? and to mitigate the effects on humans and infrastructure? Well, we can begin by building better airports or improving on airports. Singapore's Changi Airport has a new passenger terminal that is built 5.5 meters above sea level. And Avino, an operator of airports along the Norway coast, has mandated that all new runways must be built at least 7 meters above sea level. We can also turn to technology. Better modeling of atmospheric events and predictive modeling can help better mitigate any incoming storms. Currently, American Airlines and United have begun using these modeling practices to predict the proximity of lightning around the airport to allow for work on the tarmac to continue in safe proximities to their ground workers. Extra staffing. With an increase of flight delays and cancellations, there is a need for new crews. Most airlines have crew time limits in which a pilot or flight crew can only be working for certain amounts of time, and then they have to have a certain amount of time off to make sure that they are refreshed and have the mental capacity to fly a plane. So there needs to be extra staffing, not only in the terminals for dealing with customer service when there is a delayed or canceled flight, but also for the flight crew. And the last mitigation that we can take against disasters in the aviation industry is to eliminate dangerous routes. There has already been a ban in the North Sea on flying helicopters in extreme weather after multiple helicopter crashes. These helicopters bring oil workers out to the rigs in the dangerous North Sea. And as climate change increases and there is a increase in dangerous destinations around airports, some of these flight destinations and routes might have to be canceled overall.